Say, okay, tonight's talk, Savvy Katham, you've met her now because she's talking to you. And Savvy works at KPMG as a consultant. She's got like 20 years experience now in various industries, pharma, food, finance, insurance, and technology. And she's got a lot of experience, mostly working with people doing their Agile conversions, and she presents often on Agile topics and GAMP audits, and how to deal with those. So at this point, uh, I'm going to turn it over to Savvy.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for the introduction and for all of you who joined. I'm one of the family members of Agile New England. You might have seen me for the last 8 or 10 years during Agile Games. It's always a pleasure to come back and bring those experiences and share and spread Agile passion across. So thank you again for joining. And today's topic is about an ocean. That's what I see. It's all about audit. So we have Agile in one side and then audit in another side. How these two worlds coexist and how we can make it successful using Agile. That's what we are going to see in the next hour or so. So as I'm doing virtual, it's hard for me to see in case you have any questions. Unless you ask me, I don't want you to just stuck at where your question is and losing the rest of the topic. So please do not hesitate, just ping me or Nancy so that we want to address your questions first so that we can continue as a team throughout this session. Is that team agreement okay with all of you?
Yes, we can keep an eye on the chat window for you, Savvy. Thanks.
Yeah. So a little bit about me. So yes, with 20 years into the industry, I see myself as Agile evangelist, where I really want to spread the passion of Agile, how it connects all the dots in the software delivery world so that we have a quality product that's being delivered to customers. And why Agile? What makes me excited about Agile is the flexibility. It's not restricted only to software development like coding or testing, but you know what? It can fit in every part of the product delivery, including Agile. Only thing Agile asks or Agile transformation agents like me asks is bring us on and try to embrace Agile and it will give you unlimited benefits. I think I'm doing more marketing about Agile. I guess I should get into the topic. So this is what it is. So today, we are going to focus on 3 topics or 3 key items. You are spending your valuable 1 hour or so. So what are you going to get out of this 1 hour? So we are going to talk about why IT audits are important, and can Agile and audits coexist? And what are the 10 tips for successful IT Agile projects and their auditing? So let's go on to one by one topic. But before I do, I just want to make sure that we do some icebreaker to warm you up, groove into the topic. And I just saw most of you said like, oh, okay, what are the 3 top challenges on IT audits? We got like less percentage of reaction to it. It's fine. So I'm not tricking. I'm not like from HR department where I ask the same question in different ways and still trying to get that answer. But here you can get creative. And we will see at the end of the session whether all these got answered or are a part of it. But when you think of Agile or IT compliance audits, because audit is a big ocean. So I'm not trying to boil the ocean with all different components, but I'm restricting today's topic only for IT Agile projects. Let's focus on a part of it and then see what kind of responses we get. So think about it. Now, some of you might have interacted with auditors, or some of you might have participated as a Scrum team member in audit reviews, or some of you in the leadership meetings, you might have talked or heard about audit and their role in the organization. So when you think of IT Agile projects and then IT audits, what could go wrong? Let me see if I'm getting any chat messages. Beauty of technology is it never works when we want to see it. That's where I am sailing right now. I can't see my chat box to see the responses.
That's okay. We'll read it to you if things come in.
Yeah. But if we got some responses, we can get on to activity.
Things that go wrong, that you don't pass the audit. Audit findings leading to added low value process. Missed deadlines.
Okay.
Audit compliance is typically not done continuously. Well, we should be delivering our systems continuously. GXP projects. Developers may not trust documentation. Or no, may not trust auditors. Whoops. Medical device software. Okay, someone wrote focus can be on metrics rather than on outcomes. Unplanned pandemic. So lots of things can go wrong.
I like the last one, unplanned pandemic. Totally fair. Okay, let's see. As we had team agreements, so people who have older version of Zoom, hand is a slap, meaning no, and then thumbs up is yes, I guess. So let's look into the second level of questions. Do you shop online if the site isn't secure? And please be honest. Okay. Nancy, are you seeing some responses?
I'm seeing quite a few no's in the chat window.
Okay, fair. So let's move on to the next question. Will you be okay if the previous owner has a set of keys to your newly bought house? And
several people are saying no.
Interesting. And it is intentional that I did not put the option that says it depends. It has to be either yes or no.
Someone wrote get the locks changed.
Oh, sweet. Okay, I would like to know that person's name. Good. Here you go. An ex-employee has a password to the online data vault of your company. Will you keep the password as is or change it?
Okay, a lot of people are writing change it. So far, all are in favor of changing it.
Would you
says,
share
no, take away their access and change it.
Okay.
Would you share your why would you use a single password on such an asset? Interesting.
Okay. Oh, okay. Still people are trying to answer this one. Fair. Why would I use it? Good question. Okay, let's move on to the fourth one, the last question. Would you share your full name and last 4 digits of your credit card with the presenter? Hey, I'm your friend. How about that? You all know me. You're seeing me forever.
Okay, someone said ha ha ha. Someone said never. Someone says nope. So I'm just seeing a lot of no's scrolling up here. And I haven't seen a yes yet. Someone said only if there were a good reason to.
Good reason. Good
Yeah.
reason. You know, Sabi, you're seeing me right now on the video.
Well, uh, no, there's no's. Someone offers Smith 9999, and the
Sweet.
rest are no's.
Okay. So did anyone in the audience got all yeses or all nos for these 4 questions?
Okay, we're asking people to say that someone said mostly no's. Someone else said they wrote all no's. There's several others who are saying all no's.
Okay.
Whoop. Yep.
So no one.
Yeah, I'm just seeing a lot of people in the chat saying they gave it all no's.
Good. Good. But what made you to say no? I'm going back to question number 3. Did you ever heard or hear any situation where ex-employees or people who left the company still are on records and their accounts are not deactivated? Did you ever come across that situation or didn't feel like changing it because you trust that employee, right?
Other situations where the ex-employee becomes a contractor or the ex-employee is continuing to work on a project, and it would be justified.
Okay. So stay with me on that. Yes. So an ex-employee becomes a contractor. Does it mean technically he is no more an employee? And do you agree for contractor, the access authorizations and any credentials are different from employee?
It depends on what the person is doing.
Okay. Yep. So this is where the standards and then how companies come up with process comes into picture. But technically the privileges or whatever access as an employee he was having, but once he gets out of company's register as an employee and changes his status into a contractor, it's a new account altogether. His role changes, HR role, and his access privileges or access to the company's data or access to any confidential information may not be the same as what he once used to have. Again, it depends on the process, how they set up, but possibly that may be one of the things that companies have to take a look at it. And I respect all, maybe he was working with the company for over 20 years and he has that seniority and then knowledge, but processes delineate the roles and delineate what the employee or the contractor is and then come up with different set of access or authorizations or controls on how you had to treat a contractor. And some of you might be consultants too, right? I'm sure you might have seen that. Do we all get access to a database as a consultant, even if it is read only?
Yeah, sometimes.
Again,
Very
it depends on what the job is. I mean, if the job requires it, yes. If the job doesn't require it, then no.
Yeah, fair, totally. But even then, there will be some companies where if it is really confidential data, they will have these rules that contractors are never allowed to view that data. You're absolutely right. And if you are going as a consultant on working on a data warehouse, fair. But still, they will have these restrictions to control and have the security set up in such a way that there is this confidential information that they would like to share only with employees or only employees will have authorization to view the data.
Yeah, in
So-
chat, people are saying no, or some are saying it depends on the role.
See, that's why I didn't want to put it depends. But as much as in the industry, we have each company has different set of process, tools, and people. But when I do in general, right, these questions are in general we have seen, and even some companies, like if you're not into IT department, but you're a product owner who is working on the IT product, sometimes you may not get access just like a developers or technical lead to even view some of the data.
Mhm.
So there are always these exceptional cases, but again, if you are wearing that audit view, I think 5 times they ask is why, 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 and what. 5 whys. So that's a great start, and thank you for your honest answers. So let's get into the topic. So this is our Kanban. We'll go one story at a time, and the first story is about importance of IT audit. How many of you recently caught up on cyber crimes and then cyber attacks, data breach, and then open source and challenges about security, right? If you see Google, it has 200 billion lines of code, monster repository. And imagine if in some component data hack or security breach happened. What's the easiest way to track that bug within the next 2 hours, or stop that hacking or any cyber crimes that have been increased in the last couple of years? People are talking about security, safety. It's beyond physical security. I'm not even talking about people stepping into your building and stealing your hard disk, laptops, or messing up with your data warehouse, right? So we are building as IT products huge, largest repositories with code in it. How can we stop these cyber attacks? And why should we stop in the first place? It all boils down to brand image of the company, and some companies lost their market share, and some might have really got into closure. And whatever for the last 300 years or even last 10 years, but every company is seriously scared enough because of these cyber attacks, and they want to spend more and more into this risk-based audits or security strategy to make sure customers are believing and trusting them. That's where audit comes into picture. Moving on to the next slide, I'm sure each one of you resonate this. Market is fast, so it's like speed to market. Let's do the product development. Let's do the innovation, and we want to compete. Fast delivery, faster. Okay, reduce ideation to delivery. Are we compromising on something? Oh, we can't compromise on delivery because we have to just do the working software, speed up, and every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, or even if it is waterfall, yes, we are waiting for average of 18 months, but 18 months sometimes it was, or long ago, 10 years ago, it was the speed to market, faster delivery. But now with Agile coming in, yes, everybody feels like Agile has this magic wand, so we can just deliver. Oh, we don't need any documentation. Oh, you know what? Let's go Agile overnight. We don't need any risk evaluation on it. We can do innovation, explore, and just put it in the sprint and get it out. What is that getting compromised? Are companies really looking into that risk as we go in this fast mode? And yes, we need to have innovation, but in the name of accelerating IT product delivery or IT software development, is there anything being missed in that journey which will bite us at the end of the day? Maybe 1 year from now or immediately right after, as soon as you put the code into production. If you don't have answers, IT audit can give you those, right? And I brought this topic intentionally, not focusing on auditors, but we all are auditors by nature, right? First 4 questions, nobody was watching you, nobody asked you to do it, but you all said like, no, that's not right. So we are going to change the password, or we don't want extra set of keys with the past owner. No process, no tools. You said it. Same thing audit. So why audit? What IT audit does? So as I said, I'll keep it only for IT audit for today, right? The IT audit for me in layman terms, it's like making sure all the applications, softwares or hardware, right? Everything is working as expected in a secure environment so that business operations are happening without any interruptions. Customer is happy, internal customers are happy, and then company is flourishing. It's that simple, right? And these IT audits, they help in making sure the processes to develop any IT projects or products are in place. For example, waterfall or agile here, right? How agile works. What are the working ways of working? How teams have to make sure that they have cadence, or what kind of coding standards and then peer code reviews that developers have to work, and what kind of delivery frameworks that employees are given so that they can use it as they navigate from one phase to another. And then making sure internal and external network. Sometimes if as a part of software product development, if you have to interact with third-party software, or you know what, modern delivery technologies like cloud, it's everywhere. Everybody wants to get onto cloud. No more on-premise. But when you're going into cloud solutions and putting your data, or are you working in like office.com, MS Office 360, web browser based, how are you making sure whatever you're working, your confidential work is safe, secure? And then audit helps to make sure that if there are any federal compliance requirements or any other compliance requirements, those are handled. And then last but not the least, my favorite is security. Yes, we are big on data. So we talk about data breaches, or even some of you, if your companies are giving you like mobile access to your company's environment, mobile security, multi-factor authentication, or how are they making sure that if for whatever reason you lost your mobile, how are they going to disconnect any data that is being on your phone that is company's data? It's not going into wrong hands. So this talks about, at a high level, IT audit benefits are they come into picture so that all these IT systems are adequately protected, and then make sure that whatever the reliable information that a company has, it's not going outside the network. And it covers data, IT apps, IT strategy at a bigger picture, and then business portfolio and any ongoing programs and projects. It can be products that are put in production that are in maintenance mode, or new product development or enhancements associated with it. Let's say this, right? If some of you might have already participated in audit reviews, the real audit reviews, and then some of you may be auditors at some point, just volunteering for initial review of audit, not the formal audit, which we call it as internal audit, right? What's the difference? In traditional audit, it's more very reactive and prescriptive. It's like, okay, if you want to go from A to B, you have to go exactly with the line that I drew, and don't even change and don't even try to think. As an auditor, if I want to see an approval in email, I want to see an approval in email. Or if I want to see it as a wet signature on my business requirements document, I don't agree or take email signature or sign off. I want to see that paper. I want to see if that ink is made of this quality, and then is it correct? It's very prescriptive. What happened with that, right? Everything is evolving, but the behaviors in traditional audit, and these are all not, I'm saying that they exhibit, but yes, in different scenarios or in different contexts, yes, these behaviors did come across intentionally or unintentional. So first thing is blame game. Oh, you know what? Auditors do not know anything about it. And auditors say like, oh, developers do not know what to show it. We ask everything, but it's not happening. Or, some people may say, some scrum teams may say like, oh, you know what, whatever the timelines they are set aside for mitigations, it's too aggressive, or we don't agree to it. Or sometimes it's like adding extra process about auditing or slowing down on the actual projects. Why do you think it happens? Why teams believe that these extra processes are coming into picture and they are slowing down the projects? And then auditors always come up with no recommendations, but just slapping on the results and say like, oh, this is my observation log and these are the observations made, and then we want you to resolve it or mitigate it. What happens with that? Right? So here, keeping traditional behaviors aside, how can we make it happen so that it's more collaborative, more partnership coming into picture? How about proactive and descriptive? Hey, whenever you do the requirements, please make sure you have sign off from product owner. I'm okay if it is CFR Part 11 and then e-signature in the tool. I am okay. But in the audit trail, I want to see before developers picked up their code, I see a sign off from product owner, the roles and responsibilities that were identified. And then inviting them, audit team representation in yearly op planning, or identifying projects upfront to see how many of these projects are risk-based, so that audit team or audit representation is required, and how many projects are aimed for audits, not all maybe, and then share current portfolio with audit leadership, engage them upfront. Do you agree? So at the end of this topic, I think the benefits are far higher when the awareness about what contributions that audit team or compliance team is making in the company and also on IT projects, and training. I'm not saying training as in 2 days training or a comprehensive like 100 slides of deck. but having that visibility and awareness of right roles that contributes to successful IT product delivery or IT project delivery, that bringing to attention or bringing to the limelight from management and from whoever the stakeholders are, that's very critical. Modern is more prescriptive and proactive and descriptive, because this proactive involvement of right roles from the beginning, and then making sure the formal independent uh, reported board of audit team, yes, it's formal, but at the same time having those auditors come in throughout the project, they grow with other scrum team members and make it as informal reviews. I'm not even saying that it has to go as a formal review every time, but informal reviews and providing that feedback upfront from audit perspective, and then contribute to the product development or quality delivery is critical. That's the role of IT audit, and that's the role of having an audit team on IT projects. And then just let's move on to why we need agile and IT audit coexistence. Nobody said we want. We were happy with our own favorite methodology. When we all think of IT software development, what comes to our mind first? Yes.
Savvy, have you got time for a quick question?
Yes.
Someone is asking in chat, is Savvy saying modern audit is like that now, or is this the way she thinks it should be?
It should be. It should be. And some of the companies or some of the clients are aiming towards it as they focus more on agile transformation.
Thank you.
Yep, that's a good question. So we all know it, right? When audit comes, so most of the times we see very reactive tail end, especially when you think about incident management, change and release management, authorizations. How often we hear continuous audit reviews? It doesn't have to be detailed, right? But still making sure that nothing has changed from last iteration to this iteration. But what I was aware of during the early days of my career, or it comes late in the game, right after the product is put in production, and definitely they have their own planning schedules. And it all worked out. Here we are not trying to say which one is good or which one is bad or which one is right or wrong. But here we are seeing the opportunities, and you will see in a bit how slightly changing the ways of work or how we see the things, little bit of mindset and going into agile have helped companies with real-time examples in the following slides. But definitely learning about why IT audits are required, and especially IT audits on IT projects is required, and how these two can coexist would level set the introduction when we actually go and see what are the 10 tips that were successful for some of the clients. Now, when we take about this one, like in the industry, there are people who say like, oh, this is correct. There are people who always say like, it's like it depends. But in some domains like life sciences, when they talk about GAM or GAM compliance, these CFR Part 11s and all, there is no compromise, and they want to make sure that everything is happening on the go, and then their instrument customer would never install unless all this is done, and then records of successful traceability is shown. So there are some tight compliance requirements in some domains, especially because of patient and lives are involved. And some industries, it may not be too tight, but still that rigor is there. I think that's the crux of it. So what's the importance of having this IT audit at a high level? Why are we doing it? And what benefits it gives ultimately in terms of when we're trying to sell the product out or when we try to serve the product to our customers. Like imagine if you have insurance from Geico and all of a sudden one fine day you see that your premium is increased and it's an in-house development application, for example, and somebody just went in and hacked the code because that particular employee was let go and he was so mad and he just made sure that he hacked the code and then put the code into production and then left. Who has to be blamed for that if we do not have processes in place or checks in place? And you don't want to wait for auditors to come, maybe after 6 months, whatever the schedule they have. There has to be some what we say is first line of defense is you, and the second line defense is the application owners and the application team. Last is auditors. So even if it is last, how we can bring them up front so that at the beginning, the minute we start the IT software development, how they can contribute so that we don't have to face this so late in the game. And we resonate this one. I think I can give you this example. Testers. When we talk about bugs, at the early stages of development, if we find the bug, the cost involved is much less than same bug being identified right before the release or after the release. It took a lot of years for us and then have that tester representation within Scrum teams. But we got used to it. Right now, Scrum team is a composition of developers and testers, and of course with additional roles. But we recognized it. It was tough initially. I still remember when it was not even coined as Agile, we used to call them as incremental builds. So we used to have like developers mostly, and then testers would come, but there was no concept of Scrum team and all. We used to call like dev teams. And then later, everybody, right roles were coming into a Scrum team, and then it helped a lot. Let's see a little bit now. We know waterfall, it's our second nature, right? We don't have to learn anything new about it at all. Let's see Agile. Now we all know Agile is iterative, incremental framework, and we have like this huge backlog. If I relate that with waterfall, where we used to have business requirements document, it's like 100+ pages, and then we used to have like sign off from product owner or product manager or business manager. Now, same thing here. This backlog is a combination of technical stories, business stories, non-functional requirements related to security and all. But if you are developing a project or product, or just business stories are enough? How about we widen our scope and add some technical design related stories, fair, but still widen our scope and then vision, and then how about adding non-functional requirements like performance testing and what it takes to improve server, because every time you put a new project or program, how the production is reacting in terms of production environment. And does it require, like, because of this new product, we have more number of customers coming, how the performance is, how fast the transactions need to complete, is it 5 seconds, 1 second, and what's the hardware is needed. Is your backlog involving or including all those? Most of the times we actually make sure as long as business requirements are done, it's done. Guess what? After some time, it's not even ready to put in production because so late in the game, we are trying to see, like, oops, we don't have right hardware. Or, you know what, did we not think about these new resources or new customers coming from different country? How about I had to put like data security or perform extra vulnerability test or pen test? Who is thinking all those upfront? We can always go into reactive mode, learn about it, and learn after some outages or data breaches. Or you come up front, which I call it a shift left, and then think about all those requirements and then add it to the backlog. And even though you have like huge set of requirements, you take a chunk of requirements into your sprint backlog through sprint planning. And then with 1 to 4 weeks of duration, we call it a sprint. And we pick enough work, or Scrum teams pick enough work which they commit so that they want to complete those in, say, for this example, take 2 weeks of sprint. And then the code being developed is reviewed, and then working software is the shippable product to put in production. And then we'll have sprint retrospective, right? But what happens in those 2 weeks of sprint? It's no less than any, even if you see other waterfall or any hybrid projects, every sprint is planned well. And it starts with making sure user stories have acceptance criteria, and then all the necessary items for definition of done. And then incremental design based on the stories that are being picked. And then coding and unit testing. And then any integration testing, functional testing, UAT. I hope all these keywords are resonating with you. And then deployment, whether the deployment happens manually or auto. I come from the days where we had configuration management team. Everybody was like manual. Tech lead used to sit there, and then configuration manager used to sit there right before the release. Release is at 5 a.m. So we will be there from the night, from 8 p.m. to morning 7 a.m. We used to get dinner and then breakfast and a lot of snacks. I miss those days, but everything is manual. But now you don't see that thanks to DevOps. We have a lot of tools that works in favor for us so that we can do the automated testing and deploy. And then when it is definition of done happen, then you put it in release. Now, even to make it even more fun and exciting, even the release, we don't have to make sure like every release you have done, it's not ready for customers. It can just stay the code there, and we can flip it to customers only when it is ready. DevOps offers all these benefits, and throughout this 2 weeks of sprint duration, architectural runway, anything sporting is happening like a backbone seamlessly. But what is missing in this picture?
Audit.
Absolutely. Where is audit in here? I'll take one example. Again, all the examples I'm taking is to support the conversation, right? And in no means it's related to any company or any person. That's the disclaimer I want to put, right? That said, suddenly a developer wants access to production system. What's the process? Because they are stuck in deployment and then they want to make sure they're fixing it, whatever the bug that came up, because it's critical. Somebody gave access to production to developer. What happens? I am very optimistic. Nothing happens. I trust my developer. But from audit side, or even if anything goes wrong, data breach can happen, company's brand image at risk, or outage can happen that would result in like fixing it and it takes more than 3 days. That means business operations are halted. Anything can happen, right? Where's the process? Who approved it? And why we have to approve it? Where is the plan B action in case anything happens to release? Backup planning. That's the process that audit asks some questions. It's not just for the sake of asking questions. And forget about audit. Even we as Scrum team members should start thinking about it. What happens? What's the plan B? And now we are talking about microservices and all, so that our releases have success rate higher, so that there are no incidents, which is good, but things happen. That's why you need to have some process in place. Shift left, security first. Yes, I'm dreaming about this. I am talking about this to all my network, and these days I love this. Being a data freak, and I love this even more because having that audit representation up front, maybe we will have some stories about audit related. Oh, do we have release management? And our questions are release and change management. We will make sure that a change request is created upfront before you put anything in production. Or we will make sure that no data or code is touched by human. Everything is happening automated from deployment process to actual release. The minute code touches pre-prod environment. Let's have those as some of the user stories, or make audit as an epic and then add any audit related requests. I still remember for the identity access management, that's itself is a huge, like I would say mini ocean maybe. Yeah, right? But still in ITGC controls, IT general controls, if you see access, within access, you talk about authorizations, user management, different subsections. How about we start thinking about it while we develop the product, and then have those in the backlog and track? Or as developers are picking up the scope of stories to work in a sprint, have some stories associated with audit maybe, or non-functional requirements. You can consider audit as non-functional requirements and have them added. You see most of the cases architects talk about when they are talking about architectural user stories or epics in the backlog, they think at least 4 sprints out to see like, oh, if this code is or this feature is put in production, I want to make sure the server's performance is going great. And what are the components need to be upgraded or evolved, and how microservices need to help and how they work. That long and strategic view, but tactical work in the backlog to be placed is the success that would help us to think about how security happens upfront, be it security strategy, or be it talking about, oh, is this product related to a web product? Okay, so how about we do the vulnerability test and then you hire some ethical hackers or have them test your product upfront in test environments or do the pen testing. And then make sure that when you are putting this in production, the benefit is you're earning the trust from customers. That's the brand image that you're building. So all in all, yes, IT agile projects and IT artists, they can coexist. And one takeaway from this topic, from this story, I can say is proactively involve them upfront so that we have all kinds of risks are covered, right? And these people see the things in different way. And then they would come and complement Scrum team members so that we are delivering product or project with high quality. Now comes the real action, right? Yeah, Savi, this is all good. So what's in it for me? I want to know the tips. Give me that. Okay? Let's get into that. And when I thought about 10, I wish I want to make this as 100 tips, honestly, because there's so much to offer back and so much to learn from each other. That's what we are here for. And then I condensed it to top 10, and which are very close to my heart. And some of them are real life stories and that I was involved in, and some I had to coach some other friends from different companies, right? And the fact is, first tip, always start with goal in mind. Oh, no, we don't have any goals for sprints. We don't have any vision for our 3-month increment on our agile projects. Oh yeah, we started this product, but you know what? We kept it on hold because we were not getting the same ROI or what we thought about. And then we just kept it on hold. What happened to the budget? Yeah, it's sunken cost. Are you familiar with this kind of conversations or heard? And even PMI, they put yearly reports where what's the success rate and how many projects are going south. And if you remember the standard graphics from Chaos report, they said like more than 60% of any product's features are not being used. They are left unused, or projects that are not using Agile, at least in the last couple of years, what I'm seeing is more and more are favoring Agile, but if they are not using Agile, then success rate is very less. So here, traceability is the backbone for a successful product. And how do you define traceability? Traceability is, for me, a proven unified backlog where all the business requirements is not just the business requirements, but is the technical requirements and non-functional requirements, audit requirements, security requirements, anything associated with the product are tracked in a backlog with tight dependencies, and how the product is progressing. Where were we as a team last sprint versus where we are? How am I measuring it through traceability so that every time I am incrementing on the product and building on top of the code that is being generated or completed in the last sprint? Not just code, but activities that are completed in the last sprint. I still remember this. We were doing IT M&A. And then we had this small company where they had like just 3 developers, and it came for acquisition. And then as a part of M&A evaluation, we wanted to do the code-based evaluation and review. And somebody, one architect, came up with some question on it, because in production, as the time has it, they ended up having a bug, and of which out of 3 developers, 1 developer went on vacation. Other 2 developers did not know what other developer was working. There was no backlog, no traceability, there's nothing. Guess what? That bug, which had resulted in outage, it had to wait till that developer canceled his vacation and came back and fixed it. We don't want that. So traceability, thinking always upfront and having that traceability is critical. And when I think about life sciences and healthcare industry, this traceability is a big thing. And then my favorite is CFR Part 11. They talk about, okay, e-signatures, that's fine. But when I do my audit trail, please make sure the steps are happening in the sequence. For example, we don't want developer going and making any changes after the code freeze. And you would know that in the tool, as per the process laid out, if anybody is touching the frozen code, and auditors will look into that. And they want to make sure that code is sanctified before it gets into production. So please, traceability is the big thing. And companies I have seen who have spent and supported this unified backlog, they had the success on the project high because they made sure, I'm not saying that every story or epic or down to the feature, everything is delivered in the production. No, that helped them during backlog refinement, what kind of stories need to be prioritized and what kind of traceability is happening in the roadmap so that they see like this set of features are going in PI1, which is program increment every 3 months, and what happens to the next 2 increments when they're trying to forecast a product roadmap. And you can go wrong. Second one is about minimum viable process. Yes, so we all know about average waterfall projects are 18 months old. And then if you want to see any success, you need to wait for 18 months. In between, the business sponsor might have changed to different department, or somebody hit the lottery and then just dumped the project and left the company, or developers were contractors and there were like layoffs, or company was not doing well and we lost the knowledge. That's one. And even on agile projects, which I call it as corrupted agile, right? Where each department defines what agile is, which is not in sync across the board, where agile transformation comes into picture, where everybody talks the same language and make sure that there is this standards or how they grow with agile maturity as a team, as a family happens. So if in a company, siloed departments, and then agile process is defined and utilized by them differently, then what happens? Some people may define like, oh, agile is cowboy coding, so I don't want to do any documentation. I'm just going to code and I will not do any commenting on my modules. And some department says like, oh, it's agile, right? I'll go with 3-week sprint. And another team says like, oh, for me, 2-week sprint works. How about that? Most of the times, I still remember this incident where after spending $5 million, that project was scrapped after spending $5 million and 18 to 20 months. In reality, you may be thinking like, is it for real? It takes that much time to see if a project is not working well or not. Yes, you can see the metrics on PMI survey too for some of them, and then case studies. It happened. Wherein Agile comes into picture, And all this says is, be it audit departments, scrum teams, or anybody associated, the cross-functional teams, cross-departmental teams, please make sure you establish this agile process standards that support the product's quality. It's as simple as having, okay, agile ways of working, making sure agile ceremony is 2 weeks of sprint for all people. It's the same across the board. And then integration testing or integration of code happens at the end of each sprint. And then demos happen at the end of, say, every 2 sprints. Whatever is the ways of working, but have that minimum agile process. Initially, it may be prescriptive, but once teams get evolved and highly efficient by working closely in agile environment, then they get used to how within 2 weeks, they get creative to deliver the commitment. Highly efficient agile teams never means that, okay, senior most scrum teams will have 2 weeks of sprint because they are smart and seasoned. And then like new teams will have 3 weeks because poor guys, they're just starting. They don't know any agile. No, please, no. Have that minimum viable process so that right up front, everybody is understanding the agreements and getting onto the train to support the project. And third one is the cadence and synchrony. I still remember this. As I was mentioning early on, when we talked about is iterative or incremental builds, all we know is about developer. Oh my God, there's so much development. So we need developers first, and let's code a lot, and then we will bring testers, right? Well, what happened in that case? Yes, we had a lot of code developed. It's a huge batch of work. But when testers were not onboarded at the right time, the product's quality went low and we had more bugs and defects. And that client realized like how important it is to have representation of right roles in a Scrum team. And most of the teams or companies would not even say Scrum teams. That's okay. Whatever you want to call, fair. But what Agile talks about is have that right representation of roles. Not like too much of developers or too many testers, but have, like, especially if it is like validation checkpoints, how product is working, and you need that quality assurance, just the feedback, not even detailed review, because product is still work in progress. So we can't do anything that's in production that they can evaluate, but have that representation and validation checkpoints where especially, right, for some domains, they have this V model. And whatever happens to the left side of the V should complement to the right side of the V, right? So how they are doing it. And even if you want to bring a quality assurance or validation expert too late in the game, how do you expect him or her to learn everything that these team members were sailing for the last couple sprints and then whip it up and then say like, oh, this product is good or bad? You need time for that validation expert also to give a right report, validation report. So make sure they are coming up front. Even if it is not in the first sprint, start thinking in your sprint 0, pre-planning phase. What are the roles you need? And when do you think the best example or best time these roles should come into picture? Try to forecast it. And then you keep tracking, and as every sprint completes, then it's time for you to retrospect and see even your forecast or whatever the initial plan, do you have to do some changes? That's the cadence and synchrony that we are talking about. Moving on to value or over quantity. So when you think about product backlog, there are many ways how you can manage a product backlog. One of my clients, they had epics, features, and user stories. And another client had only epics and user stories, no, not features at all. They're comfortable with that. It depends on client to client, right? However, why we had to see the feature level has value delivery over story level. I'm in no way saying stories do not give any value. However, stories are the lowest small logical business need. And most of the times it is not self-sustained that it can just be put in production and it will work by itself. When you have like quality assurance or auditors, you can't point them to user stories and say like, figure it out, this is what it is. So this is where I still remember for one of the life sciences clients, it's interesting. We were so excited and we had quality assurance representation, validation expert. And they were part of the Scrum team. And this is where you see downside if we get overexcited on Agile or any role. That's why you need to have that balance and maturity, right? And the downside was this validation expert was right there with the teams and then living and breathing and growing along with the product. But their vision is always, they have this vision of seeing a completed product or completed module, which is coming from their previous experience of waterfall projects that they have seen. Now everything is going in chunks. So they had hard time to figure it out and wrap their head around to see like why we are doing only this small part. What happens next? And then because they were not seeing the bigger picture, they started nitpicking user stories, and guess what happened? They were going back to developers and saying in your user story, this is not there, this is not there, because they are trying to put all their expertise on a small logical story and it technically backfired. Lessons learned, retrospective, right? Which is good. Then we said like, okay, how about we identify risk-based features in the backlog and then have them come with plan of action so that when they participate in increment planning, they can provide their input. Oh God, things have changed a lot all of a sudden. The minute we said like, don't even see user story, but please go to feature level. I still remember validation experts used to come and say like, why this user story keeps changing? Why a part of it is going like within the feature in the next sprint? How are we going to see that in a bigger picture, which is demos, solution demos, right? So having that kind of how Agile works and then grooming our team members so that they understand and then helping them as we transformation coaches, helping them what to see. Please don't. I think one thing I learned as a part of transformation or change agent is never assume that they know everything. Even if they have enough experience, please go as if they don't know and then help them understand by giving scenarios. And things have changed a lot after that. So please make sure that's very critical. And this is where the traceability end in goal, right? How you want to maintain your backlog is very critical, and it's a sprint zero planning activity. And once you start, increasing or adding stories or epics into the backlog, there is no stoppage. So please think about that right up front. And then comes planning is essential. Yeah, most of the people say like, oh, we are going sprint by sprint. So how are we going to see the metrics, or how are we going to see progress? In Waterfall, we have like weekly status reports where I put like what has been accomplished last week, what has been going to be accomplished next week. Yeah, I'm safe. You know what? I got this red, green, yellow. Yay, right? And I grew up on Waterfall, and I have huge respect for that. And if we were not to be doing Waterfall, how would we know the value of Agile too? Because we all evolved. So planning is part and parcel of every sprint. Agile is no less than any other methodology that we can think of. And then make sure we have roadmaps. And especially if auditors are coming with their work or with their input, I would have a separate box for the roadmap for audit that goes hand in hand with the product. And then we will have that separate one to see like whatever features are being delivered in each iteration, whether they are supported by the audit's features. Then and there itself, we can figure it out on the Kanban board if we are in line in terms of product delivery, or what are the other risk mitigation efforts that we can think of. I still remember for one of the clients, they said like, oh, this is Agile, right? That's okay. We can just do sprint by sprint, and which was good. And at team level, it was good. And we were tracking velocity. Some teams were doing good velocity increase and then they stabilized, and some teams were still picking up. But the concept of roadmap, even Scrum teams never understood, because they were like, oh no, we are not going waterfall and we don't want to commit anything. You know, Agile is about not committing anything than current plus one. Yes, but we are forecasting. You know why we forecast? Just to see how it comes up. And even if I forecast features 5 to 10 in second iteration, I will retrospect from the iteration 1, and then I'll change it. I'll update it. So roadmaps are very critical. Any questions so far?
There was a question a little while back asking if an internal auditor could be part of the Scrum team.
Yes, somebody really asked, and this is where it is. Perfect time. Yep. So tip number 6, my favorite. Collaborate early and often, then regretting later, right? Please have audit representation. And if you know, you can have Scrum team members, who we call it as shared services members, who don't have to be like full time on the project. We can still have their representation coming in the key ceremonies or activities like increment planning or solution demos or architectural discussions or backlog refinement, and then provide their valuable input that supports the project or product. So having that audit representation as a Scrum team member, one of the roles, yes, it helps. And one of the clients I could think of is, as I was saying early on, if traditional audit is coming later, I'm not saying later in the product life cycle or yearly, where their schedules are possibly not matching with product development or where we are supposed to be, right, in terms of expecting when audits should happen. How about get that friendship and partnership and collaboration upfront, and then have them involved early on, and then see what kind of input they have, and then see how it is helping. And as I said, have their user stories, whatever they are talking about, the control evaluation or testing, in the backlog, and let them take that work. And even if they have to do any groundwork, let them do as a part of sprinting. They can do their own preparation work, and developers would go happily and do their coding and testing, right? So please have, if there is any possibility, yes. And especially clients with high regards for what Agile can offer. And then I still remember one of the favorite stakeholders from a life sciences company, Joe, right? He was so big on Agile. He believed in it, head of software development. And his believing is spreading. And he made sure entire automation solutions are into this Agile delivery. And we created this software delivery plan or cookbook so that all software teams across the board can use them and have this V model or ceremonies, and what kind of activities, what kind of roles and races are required. That book had everything that is useful for any compliance domains like healthcare or life sciences. That's the proactive thinking. And then having that, definitely having that support from your stakeholders or sponsors is very critical in this, because it boils down to budget, right? So have right roles upfront so that we don't overblow the budget or result in slowing down the product being released in the market. And this comes as a part of your shift left mindset too. I know people easily say that it's shift left mindset, but it requires some execution, not just talking about it in the decks, but executing it by making sure right contribution is happening early by having audit representation. And the seventh one is about training, right? Most of the auditors, and we cannot assume, right? Even if they know, some auditors may be really good at technology or how to ask right questions, and some team members will be very versatile about how audit works, audit review works, and the minute they both combine, it becomes a supreme power, and then audit reviews are like seamless in and out. That's the ideal situation. But most of the times we end up into Scrum teams like developers or testers who are still learning about how audit reviews work. And then maybe there is some sense of fear, right? Oh my God, if my code is got into audit and if they have seen any gaps, am I in trouble? So it's like what we used to say is audit cops, and it's on a lighter note, right? And even for auditors, they may not be understanding some of the aspects of technology or the jargon, vocabulary, or how exactly this coding works, and then how it is going into production. Everything is like seamless. Nothing is physical that they can touch, but they can only see that code being put in production is same as whatever the documents that they can review, and then talk to developers or the Scrum teams to ask right questions. Right questions. That's the key. How do you make sure that Scrum teams are asking right question to auditors and auditors are asking right question to Scrum team members, especially when the code is being developed in increments, right? So most of the auditors are very versatile about waterfall, and then maybe in their head when they're coming, they're expecting, okay, this completed BRD with sign-offs, and then system requirements document, SRD, and then low-level tech design, high-level tech design, and then code base, and then test plan, test strategy, test scripts, test results. Everything is in line with this BRD. Oh, life is cool and beautiful, right? But in Agile, everything is happening in increments and nothing is like full. It may take more than one sprint to complete a feature, maybe. For example, if Scrum teams are working on a payment feature, that payment feature may be spread across 2 sprints. So what will they get from sprint 1, where outstanding work is still to complete in sprint 2 for payment module, which is very financial related, and we want to make sure we are having right code and the secure code, which is related to financial transactions, and then no credit card information is being sent out or hacked, which is very critical. So what kind of questions that auditors should ask, and how they will make sure and feel good about sprint 1 had right set of functionality completed, so that in sprint 2 entire payment module is complete? Training so that auditors or anybody involved, they learn about Agile framework, they learn about incremental delivery, they learn about sprint backlog, sprint planning, or product backlog, epics, stories, themes, what is Agile at a high level. Training upfront helps in 2 ways. One, when they are part of Scrum team as one of the Scrum roles, they know what kind of behaviors that they have to exhibit. And the other side is learning always helps them to change their mindset and then see and ask questions differently. And I've seen like many companies where they said like, oh, we're going to audit IT projects and they are in Agile. Auditors, let's get started. Yeah, they have this cooked up, pre-populated template of questions, right? And then they had to ask those questions. But when they come with this questionnaire, and then they will see like incremental partial delivery of work, both were not gelling. Then it was tough time to communicate in the first hand on how the audit review should happen, how they can engage Scrum teams, or how they can get into this dialogue of moving ahead in the audit review. So please make sure that training is also part of your transformation, and this has proven very successful for many clients.
Savvy, we need to speed it up a little bit so that we have time for questions.
Yep, sure. And then we're almost there. And then think about development is not always about just coding. There's more to it. And you might have heard about DevSecOps. How about DevOps audit? Have that hat and then see how continuous integration, which is CI, and then continuous deployment, those are seamless and automated so that you have stable production environment. So yeah, you can have DevOps audit. And the 9th one is about minimum viable documentation. As I was saying, when we think about risk-based features, those risk-based features might contain all the non-risk-based features functionality also, and then we'll make sure that we audit only risk-based features, and then we are good to go. It doesn't mean that if a product has like 100 features, we have to test every one. So have that risk-based hat, and then make sure every time the ITGC controls are being brought in, they are focused more on risk-based controls. As I was saying, IT general controls, which has a combination of incident management, access management, and then backup planning. Now you are asking in a different way, because Agile is not giving you everything, and you don't have to wait for entire project to be completed, and then you are giving that input upfront. Now, how do you do that? Risk-based controls and planning. Participate in sprint planning. Participate in backlog refinement meetings. Understand what product is. Sit with the Scrum teams. And then you are growing along with the Scrum team members, understanding the backlog, and then take it from there. That's the minimum viable documentation. We don't want a lot of documentation and lot of testing that should happen. There can always be a creative way. And the last but not the least is, do you want to go Kaizen or Kaikaku, right? When I think of Kaizen, it's more about continuous improvement. Kaikaku is like rapid and sudden change. Do you want to have sudden change about auditors just put in IT projects, which are like agile projects, and then learn? Or you actually have them involved, continuously learn about how agile works, and then be collaborative and become great partners. So it's all about how you see, and then how you want to make sure in the end we are building products quality, or a quality product, customer safety, data security. That said, I'll open it up for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Savvy. We all get to clap now using a button.
I missed that. I can't see it.
I know. It can be a little tricky,
Yeah.
but I'll just clap for real.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm sure we have some questions. If anybody would like to ask their question verbally, you could just go ahead and unmute, and I will look in the chat window to see if there's some questions that anybody want to go ahead and speak.
I have a question. So I don't hear much about traceability in the Agile community. How is traceability done on Agile projects?
Yeah, Julie, thank you for asking. So that was the first tip. I'm glad you're asking. So traceability, how in Agile community we talk about is traceability's first starting point is building a strong unified backlog. And then making sure in the IT projects that traceability is tied back to developer coding standards or any associated procedures, and then creation of that software delivery plan. These all combined together will be a strong candidate for traceability.
So you're not talking about traceability like between, say, for example, the user story and the class that it ended up in, or you're not talking about traceability as in engineering traceability then?
When you say engineering traceability, give me more.
Being able to tie back that a certain a certain developed feature or piece of code
Yep.
represents the completion of a business requirement.
So exactly that's what it is. So when I say traceability, no, I'm not talking about going into the class or actual piece of code, but you're right. So the traceability is in terms of creating this backlog and having that developed in such a way that we have epics and user stories and have for each identified business requirement or technical requirement some acceptance criteria, and the traceability happens at the end of the sprint. Every time you do a solution demo, you are mapping that a piece of set of stories coming, and then they are picked up in a sprint and they are demo, they are set to complete, and behind the scenes there may be associated code base for it, piece of code, but that's the traceability that is happening. That's what I was talking about.
Savi, may I?
Yeah.
So specifically what you're talking about, there's a couple of ways of handling specifically what you're talking about of like, can you sign off that, this particular user requirement has been met? There's unit tests for backend and data requirements. And then you've got things like Cucumber that are essentially executable requirements where it runs the code and makes sure that, those requirements are met. But you started out talking about traceability, which is a little different. And there are a lot of tools in there. And I was talking about this in chat earlier, how you can use tools to automate creating that audit log. So for instance, you can have Jenkins, when it does a build, it can link that build to the story that, that was getting built, and the merges that went into that. Similarly, you can have tools that are tracing, what branches got into a particular release. You can have Git integrating with, let's say you're using Jira. You could have Git integrating with Jira. You could have Jenkins integrating with Jira, all adding comments onto the story when particular things happen, and improving that audit log. And just as importantly, when you have a particular build that's going into the release, you have the full provenance of like what, if you have recorded like what build number that came out of, then you have the full history of like what code changes went into it. And all of that takes work to set up, but not a lot of work ongoing. It just kind of happens automatically.
Okay, thank you. There's another question in chat, if we could move on to that, Savi. Another person asks, does anyone have to follow ITIL, which prescribes separation of testing from dev? Where does that fit into what you've been talking about?
Okay, so the question is, I wish I can see the chat. Can anyone follow the ITIL? Is that the question?
ITIL, yeah. Do people have to follow ITIL because it prescribes separation of testing from development?
It's a tough question, because I'm gonna hear like, oh, not all have to follow ITIL. But the way I see it is, ITIL Infrastructure Library or ITSM, they are so big on making sure we have safe production environments and less outages. So you can use that framework or standards if that helps. But all in all, when you develop your product, yes, you can take the help of any standards as required and then make them as a story to see like how it's going to help. And then having ITIL referring and then coming back and using, definitely it would add value.
Okay, I think that at this point we need to move on. So what I'd like to do is let's wrap up from your session, Savvy, and let's all say thank you again.
Thank you again.